The great hall was filled with bright lights, alien music, and hundreds of voices speaking in different tongues. Leaders from across the galaxy had gathered on the planet Zyrelia for the choosing ceremony. It was an old tradition that hadn't changed in hundreds of years. Each royal daughter of the Zyrilian Empire had to choose one warrior, someone who would stand beside her during times of change and danger. This choice was more than symbolic. It meant honor, trust, and unity. It also meant that the chosen one would live near the royal palace and take part in every important event. The galaxy watched as the crowd waited for Princess Ceres to appear. She was the youngest daughter of the Zyrilian Emperor, many thought. She was still too young for such a serious choice, but her father insisted. The rules were clear. When the time came, she would choose. Human representatives stood in the far corner. They were not as powerful or respected as other species, but they were allowed to attend. Most aliens ignored the humans. They were still seen as new to space politics. Their clothes were simple, their ships old, and their numbers small. But they had earned a place through courage and loyalty in past wars. Among the humans was a young soldier named Luke. He was tall, quiet, and wore a simple uniform with a faded symbol of Earth on his chest. He didn't speak much and kept his hands behind his back. He wasn't a commander or a leader. In fact, he had only been added to the delegation as a replacement for another officer who fell sick. Luke felt out of place. The Grand Hall was filled with alien nobles in colorful armor, each holding weapons passed down from generations. He had none of that. He only had a duty to stand, observe, leave quietly when it was over. Then the drums started. The center of the room opened, and Princess Eris stepped forward. She wore a long robe made of glowing fabric, and her silver eyes sparkled under the lights. Her dark blue skin shimmered like starlight, and the golden markings on her cheeks told of her royal blood. Every warrior in the room stood taller, hoping. To be the one she picked, everyone expected her to choose one of the Zyrilian elites. They were skilled, handsome, and trained for this moment. One even gave her a deep bow, thinking it would earn him favor. But Eris did not look at them. Her eyes moved slowly around the room, then they stopped. She was looking at the human side. She walked toward them, her steps soft but sure. The music faded. Whispers filled the air. No one had ever chosen outside their species, especially not a human. She stood in front of the human group and raised her hand. Then she pointed. "He's the one I choose," she said clearly. Everyone turned to see who she meant. It was Luke. He looked shocked. His eyes widened, and he glanced around thinking she meant someone else. But Eris stepped closer, smiled gently, and nodded at him. Luke took a slow step forward. "Me?" he asked, his voice unsure. "Yes," she replied. The hall exploded with whispers and confusion. Some Zyrilian nobles frowned. Others laughed in disbelief. Many alien guests looked insulted or puzzled. Even the human leader, standing nearby, was speechless. But the emperor did not stop the ceremony. The rules were clear. Once a princess made her choice, it was final. The emperor rose from his throne and raised a hand. "The choice has been made. Let it be honored." Luke was brought to the center of the hall. He walked beside Eris, still confused, but calm. He bowed awkwardly, unsure of the proper way to greet a princess. She leaned closer and whispered, "You looked at me like I was a real person, not a symbol or a prize. That's why I chose you." Luke didn't know how to answer, just gave her a small nod and stood quietly beside her. After the ceremony, Luke was taken to the royal residence. He was given clean clothes, food, and a private room. Everything felt strange and too fancy. He wasn't used to this kind of treatment. The next morning, he was told he would train with the Zyrilian guards and learn royal customs. He would also join the princess on her trips and meetings. His job was to stay by her side, not as a bodyguard, but as a chosen companion. Many aliens still didn't accept it. In training, some elite warriors made fun of him. One even knocked him down during a sparring match and said humans are weak. The princess made a mistake. Luke said nothing, got up, brushed off the dirt, and trained harder. Princess Eris watched from a distance. She never told him, but she noticed everything: the way he treated others with respect, The way he listened before speaking, and how he never tried to impress anyone. She smiled to herself and thought, this was the right choice. In time, the story of her choice spread across the galaxy. Some called it strange. Others said it was a sign of change. But no one could deny one thing: the human warrior had been chosen. And now nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The palace grounds were massive, filled with wide stone paths, glowing plants, and tall towers that touched the sky. Luke had never seen anything like it. Every part of Xyrilia's royal city looked like a painting, too perfect to be real. He wasn't here to admire the beauty. He had a duty now, even if he didn't fully understand it. Luke followed the royal schedule. Mornings were spent learning Xyrilian customs, how to speak their formal language, how to greet their nobles, and how to sit or walk during royal events. Afternoons were for training. He sparred with Xyrilian guards, most of whom were taller, faster, and stronger. At night he joined Eris in the library, where she taught him about the galaxy's history. Princess Eris was always calm and thoughtful. She never raised her voice or showed anger, even when others questioned her choice. Sometimes she would sit in silence, watching the stars from her window. Luke didn't ask why. He just sat nearby, giving her quiet company still. Not everyone was happy about the bond between Eris and a human commander. Velen, leader of the Xyrilian Honor Guard, called a private meeting with the Emperor. He bowed deeply and spoke carefully. Your Highness, the people talk. The princess chose someone who does not match our strength. It brings doubt. If she is to lead one day, her partner must reflect our pride. The Emperor looked out the window for a long moment. Then he said the bond was her choice. She must live with it, and so must we. But keep watch. Luke could feel the stares wherever he went. Guards whispered when he passed. Nobles gave polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. He didn't argue or fight back. Instead, he focused on doing everything with care. During sword practice, one guard tried to humiliate him. The guard moved fast, knocking Luke's weapon away and laughing. You're not fit to carry a Xyrilian blade, the guard said. Luke didn't respond. He picked up his sword, nodded, and asked to try again. The next match was slower. Luke didn't win, but he stayed on his feet longer. The guard raised an eyebrow, surprised, day by day. The whispers grew quieter. One evening, Eris and Luke walked through the garden. The glowing leaves lit their path. She asked him, "Do you miss Earth?" He nodded. "Sometimes. The sky, the rain. Simple things." "What made you become a soldier?" she asked. He thought for a moment. "I didn't want to fight, but someone had to protect others, so I stepped forward." She smiled. "That's what I saw in you. Not just your silence, but your reason." They sat by a small pool. Eris dipped her hand into the water, making soft ripples. "When I was younger," she said, "I thought my choice would be easy. Someone from my world, someone strong. But when I looked at all of them, I saw pride. When I saw you, I saw peace." Luke didn't know what to say, so he stayed quiet. But inside, her words meant more than he could show. The next day, an invitation arrived from the planet Calvoran. The Calvorans were close allies, and their king wished to meet the new human chosen by Eris. A royal ship was prepared. Luke and Eris boarded with a few guards. The journey would take 3 days through deep space. Inside the ship, things were more relaxed. Eris and Luke sat side by side during meals, laughing softly at old stories. She told him how she once snuck into the royal kitchens and burned a whole tray of sweet cakes. He told her how he fell asleep during guard duty and was nearly caught. They were not just princess and protector anymore. They were slowly becoming friends. But danger was closer than they thought. Far away, a message was sent from an unknown source to a group of pirates and mercenaries. The message was short: intercept the Xyrilian ship. Bring the princess alive. The human is expendable. The pirates were fast and ruthless. They had no loyalty, only hunger for power and reward. As the royal ship moved through a quiet sector, alarms rang out. An enemy vessel appeared out of nowhere, launching a surprise attack. Explosions rocked the hallway. Lights flickered. Guards shouted, "Protect the princess." One guard yelled, Luke grabbed Reese's arm and pulled her behind cover. The ship was under fire. Guards returned shots, but the pirates were too many. This way. Luke pointed toward an emergency pod, but before they could reach it, a blast shook the ship. The floor cracked and a wall collapsed, blocking their path. Luke Eris shouted, "Stay close," he said, shielding her from falling debris. They ran through smoke-filled corridors. Finally, they reached the rear pod, small, old, but still working. "We have to go," Luke said. "What about the others?" Eris asked. "They'll fight. We need to stay alive." They entered the pod and Luke hit the release button. The pod detached and shot into space, spinning for a moment before stabilizing through the small window. They saw the royal ship growing smaller and the pirate ship growing closer. "Where do we go now?" Eris asked. "We survive," Luke replied. He didn't show fear, but he knew their trouble was far from over. They were lost in space, alone, and the enemy still hunted them. The emergency pod floated quietly through the darkness of space. It was cold inside, and the only sound was the soft hum of weak engines keeping life support running. Princess Eris sat on one side, hugging her knees. Luke sat across from her, checking the pod's small screen. It showed no rescue signal. No fleet, no planet nearby, just stars. "The pod won't last more than 2 days," Luke said calmly. "We have food and air, but the power is low." Reese nodded, trying to stay strong. "I've never been outside a royal ship without protection before." "You're not alone," he said, offering a small smile. They took turns sleeping. One watched the screen while the other rested. When Ara slept, Luke sat close, watching her breathe, making sure the air stayed clean and warm. When Luke slept, Eris kept her eyes open, fingers near the emergency beacon, waiting for any sign of help or danger. On the second day, a small planet appeared on the edge of the screen. Odd. It was gray, rocky, and looked empty, but it had breathable air and a weak gravity field. "We can land there," Luke said. Eris looked at the dark surface on the screen. "Do you think it's safe?" "I don't know. It's better than staying here." The pod shook as it entered the planet's thin atmosphere. Smoke filled the cabin, and the metal sides groaned. The pod landed hard, sliding over sharp rocks before coming to a stop against a hill. Both of them coughed as they opened the hatch. Warm air rushed in. Outside, the ground was dry and cracked. The sky above was purple with streaks of red. Large stone arches rose in the distance like the bones of some giant creature. "What kind of place is this?" Reese asked. Luke looked around. "I don't know, but we need shelter." They grabbed what supplies they could and began walking. Reese wore a silver cloak to block the dust. Luke carried a small scanner and a knife. They didn't speak much. The wind was too strong. After an hour, they found a small cave near a cliff wall. Inside, it was cool and dry. Luke used the emergency heater to warm the space. He made a small fire using local plant fiber. And Eris helped him clean the corner to sleep. For the first time in 2 days, they sat together and rested. "You saved me," Eris said softly. "It's what I'm supposed to do," Luke answered. "No," she said. "You didn't have to come with me into the pod. You could have stayed on the ship." Luke looked at her. "You pointed at me. It meant something?" "To you, ... and to me." They were silent for a moment. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, the fire crackled gently. Suddenly, the scanner beeped. Luke stood and looked at the screen. "There's movement," he said. "Not far from here." "Pirates?" Eris asked, worry in her voice. "Maybe, or something else." They turned off the fire and waited. Hours passed. Nothing happened, but at dawn, strange shapes appeared on the horizon. Tall, thin creatures with glowing arms and long necks walked slowly across the rocks. They didn't seem to notice the cave, Eris whispered. "I've never seen aliens like that." "Me neither," Luke replied. "They don't look hostile, but we stay hidden." They watched the creatures pass. Then Luke made a decision. "We can't stay here too long. Once pirates track our pod signal, they'll land. We need to move away from the crash site. Where do we go? She asked. The scanner shows a large metal object about 5 miles north. Could be a shipwreck or station. We go there. They packed up and left before noon. The sun above was hot and sharp like a blade. They moved slowly, drinking water carefully and covering their faces. Every few steps, Luke checked the scanner. Every time Eris slipped on the rocks, Luke helped her up, and when Luke's foot bled from a sharp edge, Eris cleaned the wound and tied cloth around it. They were not princess and soldier now. They were just two people trying to survive. By evening, they saw a broken alien ship half buried in the rock. It was old, covered in vines and dust. But the metal door was still strong. They entered slowly. Inside, the air was stale, but clean. Old lights flickered. Most of the systems were dead, but a few panels still worked. It's a Xyrelian scout ship, Eris said, surprised. Luke smiled. Maybe we're lucky after all. They found a working radio, but it could only send weak signals. Luke tried anyway, sending a message over and over. Distress signal from Xyrelian scout ship, he said. 2 survivors. Princess Eris and human warrior. Need help. No reply came. They kept the signal running. Over the next 2 days, they repaired parts of the ship using old tools and supplies. They cleared out the back room, set up beds, and made it feel like a shelter. And during the nights, they talked. Eris told him about her childhood, how she was trained to lead but always felt watched. Luke told her about Earth, his small home, and the stars he used to look at as a boy. On the 3rd night, as they sat beside the old ship's window, Eris looked at him and asked, "Do you regret it?" "Regret what?" Luke asked. "Being chosen?" Luke paused, then shook his head. "No, I don't." She smiled, just a little. "I don't regret it either." Suddenly, the radio made a sound. A voice came through. "This is Captain Darius of the human fleet. We received your signal. Stay where you are. We're coming." Reese and Luke looked at each other, his eyes wide with hope. Help was finally on the way, but they both knew. What came next might be harder than surviving, because now the galaxy would want answers. The sun was just rising over the rocky hills when the human rescue ship appeared in the sky. Its dark shape cut through the clouds, slow and steady. Luke and Eris stood outside the old scout ship, their faces lit with hope and exhaustion. The ship landed a short distance away. The ground shook, and dust flew everywhere. The back ramp opened. An armed human soldier stepped out, weapons ready. Then, a tall officer in a clean black uniform walked down the ramp. His voice came through, a small speaker on his chest. "Princess Arisos of Xyrelia. Sergeant Luke from Earth. We received your signal." Luke stepped forward. "We're alive. The others. They were left behind during the attack. We don't know who survived." The officer nodded. "You're safe now. Come aboard." Inside the rescue ship, the air was fresh and the lights bright. Eris sat on a bench while medical bots scanned her for injuries. Luke sat beside her, letting a medic clean the cuts on his arms and wrap his foot. "I never thought I'd miss the cold metal of a ship," Luke joked softly. Eris gave a tired smile. "Me neither." Once their vitals were confirmed as stable, the officer returned. "We've contacted both the Xyrelian and human councils. You'll be taken back to Xyrelia at once. Your presence is urgently required." Luke glanced at Eris. "I guess rest will have to wait." They reached Xyrelia 2 days later. This time, their arrival wasn't quiet. The whole city was watching. News of the attack had spread, so had the story of their survival. And even more. People were now talking about the connection between the alien princess and the human warrior. Guards lined the path to the palace. Porters tried to catch a glimpse. Nobles and generals stood in silence as Aris and Luke walked into the great hall. The emperor sat on his throne, his eyes calm but sharp. "My daughter," he said, "you have returned." Eris bowed. "Father, I am safe because of Luke." The emperor nodded, then looked at Luke. "Many did not believe your choice. Now they must reconsider. Tell me, human, why did you protect my daughter when you had a chance to escape?" Luke stood straight. "'Cause she chose me, and because it was the right thing to do." The room went quiet. Then a noble stepped forward. It was Lord Kale, a high advisor and known critic of humans. This bond is dangerous, Kale said. Our traditions are not made for outsiders. If we allow this, we open the door to chaos. I made the choice, Eris said firmly, and I do not regret it. You're young, Kale replied, perhaps not ready to lead. The Emperor raised a hand, stopping the talk. We will not decide with fear. The bond stands. But the council will vote in 1 week. Until then, both of you remain in the palace. That night, Luke sat alone in the guest chamber, staring at the ceiling. The city lights shone through the window. Everything felt heavy again. A soft knock came at the door. It was Eris. Can I come in? She asked. Of course. She walked in and sat on the edge of the chair across from him. They're going to try to break this bond, she said. I know, he replied, but I won't let them. Luke looked at her. Why me, Eris? I'm not special. I don't come from power or legend. Exactly, she whispered.
That you chose to protect.
Not for gain, but because it was right. When others looked at me as a symbol, you looked at me as a person. They sat in silence for a while. Then Eris stood. Whatever happens, I won't take back my choice. Days passed. During that time, Luke trained. Again in the palace yard, he sparred with Zyrelian guards this time. They showed him respect. Some even nodded at him after the match. Others still watched from a distance, unsure Eris met with council members. She answered every question. Words. Others hinted she should change her choice to calm the people. But she stayed firm. On the 6th day, something unexpected happened. A report arrived. A Zyrelian patrol had captured a pirate ship trying to leave the sector. Noblelord Kale's younger brother. He had been the one who sent the message to the pirates, planning the attack. The council was shocked. The Emperor stood before them and declared, "The truth has come out. This was not a test of the human warrior, but a plot against the royal family." Luke's actions were not just brave, they were just. Kale stepped forward, face pale. "I did not know my brother's plans. Please believe me," perhaps the Emperor said, "but your words will no longer guide this council." On the final day, the council gathered one last time. The Emperor stood tall. Princess Eris made her choice, and through fire and danger, that choice proved true. Luke of Earth stepped forward. Luke walked to the center of the hall. "You accept the bond given to you, knowing its weight and duty?" "Yes," Luke said without hesitation. "And let the stars remember this day. For the first time in our history, the Zyrelian royal line stands with a human, not out of tradition, but out of trust." Cheers filled the hall, not from all, but from many, enough to change things. Later that night, Eris and Luke stood on the palace balcony, watching the lights of the city below. "Do you think they'll always accept us?" Luke asked. "Maybe not all," she replied, "but enough." He smiled. "What now?" She looked at him with calm eyes. "Now we show them what this bond really means." Days passed quickly after the council's final vote. The palace returned to its normal routine, but everything felt different. The guards greeted Luke with nods now. Palace workers smiled at him. Even the people of the city, once unsure, started calling him the Quiet Blade after hearing how he protected the princess during the pirate attack. Luke didn't like attention. He stayed humble and focused on learning. Every morning, he trained with Zyrelian weapons. Every afternoon, he studied royal rules and ancient customs with Eris. Their bond had become stronger built, not just from tradition, but from experience. One morning, a message arrived from the Zyrelian border. A small colony near the edge of the galaxy had gone silent. No messages, no reports. It was a farming colony, peaceful and far from conflict. Still, the silence was strange. The Emperor called a meeting. "This may be nothing," he said, "but we must be careful. The colony rests near old pirate routes. We will send a team." A royal ship was prepared. Princess Eris asked to lead the mission herself. "I want to show the people that I don't hide behind titles," she said, "and I go where she goes," Luke added, without hesitation. The Emperor agreed. Their ship, the Zephyra, launched the next morning. It was fast, strong, and carried 20 Xyrillian guards along with the royal pair. Luke was given a new uniform half Xyrillian design, half human style. It fit him well. Simple, clean, and sharp. During the trip, Aris stood on the bridge beside Luke. "Do you think we'll find danger?" she asked. "We prepare as if we will," he said. "You always give answers that feel solid," she smiled. "Because I don't." "No, the fancy ones," he replied. They both laughed, but the moment they reached the colony's airspace, the mood changed. There were no lights on the surface. The fields looked dry. The buildings were dark. No ships were moving. No voices responded to their calls. "Life signs?" Aris asked. "Faint," the pilot replied. "A few deep underground." Luke touched his earpiece. "We land." Careful. Zephora touched down near the main hall of the colony. A few guards followed Aris and Luke outside. As the wind was still. Too still, they entered the main building. It was dusty, broken in places. Food left on tables. Lights flickering. Suddenly they heard movement. From a small doorway, a young Xyrillian child stepped out. His eyes were wide, and he looked frightened. Luke knelt down and spoke softly. "It's okay. We're here to help." "They came from the sky," the boy whispered. "They said they wanted to punish us. They wore black masks." "How many?" Aris asked. "Many. But they left when the big noise came. Only a few of us hid." Luke stood quickly. "We need to check the rest." Of the colony, split into teams. As the guards spread out, Luke and Aris searched the lower levels. They found 5 more survivors scared, cold, but alive. Suddenly, the ship's pilot called through the earpiece. "Unidentified ships approaching fast." "How many?" Luke asked. 4, all armed. Luke looked at Aris. "They're coming." "Back." They rushed outside. From the sky, black ships dropped fast. Pirate symbols were painted on their sides. "The same kind from the earlier attack. Defensive positions?" Luke shouted. Guards formed a circle around the ship. Reese stood with them, not hiding behind anyone. The pirates landed hard and dozens of masked figures rushed out. Blasters fired. Dust filled the air. Luke fought beside Aris, used both human and Xyrillian weapons, moving fast and sharp. "We didn't try to be a hero, just someone who didn't back down." A pirate charged at Aris, aiming a blaster. Before she could react, Luke stepped in front and blocked the shot with his arm shield. He grunted but stayed on his feet. "Are you all right?" she asked. "Just a scratch," he said, even though it burned. Together they moved toward the main ship, covering the escape of the colony survivors. Aris used her royal blade to fight. She had been trained well, and it showed. Finally, Xyrillian reinforcements arrived. 2 defense ships flew in, firing warning shots. The pirates ran, some caught, others fleeing into space. The battle ended. The colony was saved. People cheered. Inside the ship, the medics treated the wounded. Luke sat on the edge of a bed, his arm wrapped. Aris sat beside him, quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You always say you're not special, but today you led warriors. You protected people, even me." "I didn't do it alone," he said. "You fought too. We're stronger together." She nodded slowly. "Yes, and it's time others see that." When they returned to Xyrillia, the news of the rescue mission spread fast. Videos showed Luke fighting beside Xyrillian guards and Aris protecting civilians. Even critics now admitted something had changed. The Emperor called them to the court once more. "The galaxy sees what we see now," he said. "This bond is not just unusual, it is powerful, balanced." He turned to Luke. "You were chosen. Once now, I choose to name you Protector of Xyrillia, first human ever to hold this title." Luke was speechless. But he bowed and accepted, and Aris, standing beside him, said with pride, "He was the one I chose. And now so does the galaxy." The title Protector of Xyrillia was not just a name. It was a symbol that echoed across every planet under the Empire's flag. It meant leadership, courage, and loyalty to the throne. And now, for the first time in history, that title belonged to a human. Luke didn't ask for it. He didn't seek glory. But as the galaxy watched, He wore the title with quiet honor. He didn't change who he was. He still trained each day, walked the palace halls humbly, listened more than he spoke. Princess Eris stood by his side in every council meeting, in every royal event. No longer were there whispers behind their backs. Instead, they were met with respectful nods. Not all were friendly, but many now understood this bond was real. It had already changed everything. But peace never lasted long in the galaxy. A month after Luke received his new role, a warning arrived from the edge of Xyrillian space. A powerful fleet had entered their region ships painted in black and gold, carrying unknown weapons. They called themselves the Dusk Dominion. The Dominion wasn't part of the known alliances. They were new, fast-growing, and dangerous. Their leader sent a message. "We do not accept weakness. Your bonds with lesser species make you soft. Surrender or be destroyed." The palace council was alarmed. Some suggested preparing for war. Others said to send gifts and delay. But Princess Eris stood and spoke with strength. "We do not bend to threats, and we do not abandon what makes us strong." Luke stood beside her. "If they think our unity is weakness, let us show them what real strength looks like." A plan was made. The Xyrillian fleet would hold the core system. The human alliance promised to send support. But the Dominion was already moving fast. They attacked a mining station on the outer rim. Dozens of workers were captured. Their message was clear. They would crush the Empire's will before reaching the heart of Xyrillia. The Emperor called Eris and Luke to the war room. "We need more than defense," he said. "We need someone to face them. Not to start a war, but to remind them who we are." Eris nodded. "We'll go." Small but advanced. Ship was prepared. It was fast, cloaked, and armed. Whereas Luke and a hand-picked team of 10 guards boarded and left in secret. Their mission? Reach the mining station, rescue the workers, and send a message back. The journey was tense. No music, no comfort, only focus. As they approached the station, they saw the Dominion's flag waving on its highest tower. Strange. Shapes moved on the surface. Drones, soldiers, and turrets. Luke studied the layout. "We go in quiet. We split their systems. Once we find the hostages, we strike fast." Eris looked at him. "And if we're outnumbered," he smiled faintly, "then we remind them why I was chosen." The team landed far from the main doors and moved through old tunnels under the station. Luke led the way, silent and alert. Reese stayed close, her blade ready. Inside, they found the captured workers, tied and guarded. Luke and the team moved. With speed, a quiet signal, a burst of light, and the fight began. Blas fired. Metal rang. Reese fought with precision, protecting those behind her. Luke used Xyrillian and human combat skills, moving like a shadow through the halls. They freed the workers. But alarms went off. Enemy reinforcements were coming. "We have to hold until the extraction team arrives," Reese said, helping a wounded guard. Luke set traps near the doors. "We hold here, no one gets through." As enemy troops stormed in, they met walls of fire and resistance. The Xyrillian team fought fiercely. Luke took a shot to the shoulder, but didn't fall. Stood firm, protecting Eris and the others. Finally, the extraction ship arrived. Everyone boarded quickly. Luke stayed until the last, holding off the final wave of enemies before leaping inside. They escaped the station just as enemy blasts shook its walls. Once safe in space, Reese looked at the tired workers and guards. Then she turned to Luke, blood on his uniform, but still standing strong. "You're not just a protector," she said softly. "You're a symbol now." When they returned to Xyrillia, the galaxy already knew what happened. Messages had been sent, footage was shared. The Empire hadn't just survived, it had fought back. The Dominion sent one final message. "We expected fear. Instead, we found fire. We will not push further for now." Peace returned, at least for the time being. The Emperor held a ceremony in the Great Hall. Leaders from different worlds came to see it. Human and Xyrillian flags were flown side by side. Today, the Emperor said, "We honor those who fought. Not for power, but for each other." He looked at Eris. My daughter, your strength was never in your bloodline. It was in your heart. He reminded us what unity means. Then he turned to Luke. Human warrior. Protector. You were chosen once. By her. Now you are chosen by all of us. Double quotes, Luke stepped forward. He didn't speak much. He only bowed and said, I'll keep protecting. That's all I know. The people cheered later that night. Aris and Luke stood once more on the palace balcony. The stars above were quiet. For now, everything is changing, she said, because of one moment. Luke replied. One choice. Aris looked at him. I was told to choose a warrior. I chose a human, but really I chose hope. Luke nodded. I'll never walk away from it. They stood side by side, looking at the stars, ready for whatever would come next. Because from now on, the galaxy would remember the day the alien girl pointed at the human warrior and said, He's the one I choose.